Hey, it's Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and welcome to Ezra's Daily Live Chat. Of course, Ezra's not here. As you can see, it's me and my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid. We're filling in for the big boss man who is busily working on a project. And believe me, folks, you won't want to miss the announcement that's going to come out soon, the fruits of Ezra's labor regarding that project. So first of all, I want to extend a welcome to Sheila Gunn-Reid, who is coming to us from northern Alberta. And folks, I hope the show goes, according to plan, because our usual trained broadcast professional, Justin, who has the Ironman streak, I think, at Rebel headquarters. He never misses work due to sickness or what have you. He needed a personal day off, so we have two replacements in. We have Mike and Efron. Yes, it takes two trained broadcast professionals to do the work of Justin, and there's a lot of worry by these two gentlemen. Listen, Sheila, I am absolutely positive that there will be no hitches to this show. I'm absolutely certain this will be a perfect show. And then again, to quote Bruce Campbell in the movie Army of Darkness, and yeah, maybe I'm a Chinese jet fighter pilot. Anyways, so far so good. How are you doing, Sheila Gunn-Reid?
I'm doing great. I'm staying healthy. The snow is rapidly receding here in northern Alberta, at least for now. You know, we normally get a May long weekend snowstorm. And my husband is just a busy beaver out in the yard. So if like the power goes down or something, or you lose me, it's because he cut some sort of cord in the yard because he's excavating everything. He's a very, very bored farmer right now. With regard to the guys who are filling in for Justin, when we were discussing that the two guys, Mike and Efron, would be filling in for Justin, I did give some thought to the last time that I sent an email to Justin or a message to Justin and he wasn't at work or working. In 5 years, I don't recall him taking a day off, and maybe I wasn't paying attention, but he's a workaholic, and it does take two guys to fill in for his job. But those two guys, Mike and Efron, in their respective normal jobs, holy cow, are they also trained broadcast professionals. Efron is an incredible editor and cameraman, and Mike, on some of the digital side, on the work that he does, one of the best in the biz. So 100%. I'm fully confident that these two guys can pull it off. And normally, if there are technical difficulties, it's actually me. So it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Should we tell everybody, though, what we're doing today?
Okay, fire away. And by the way, if I may interject, Sheila, and they are two incredibly nice guys. You couldn't find nicer guys. That's the cherry on the sundae. Fire away. What are we doing here anyways?
Yeah. And Efron also has some of my same eating habits, where he likes to eat shawarma late at night. We were in Poland together. We lived off shawarma at the UN climate change conference.
And he was ahead of the curve on chicken fries too, I understand.
He absolutely was. He's an early adopter of good technology. What we're doing here today is this is Ezra's normal daily live stream. It used to just be on Friday, and during the pandemic, we sort of expanded it to every single day. Ezra's a little busy working on a super interesting, super secret project right now that the world is going to have their socks blown off with. But what we do during the day here is we do a live stream. It's a chance for us to interact with our viewers, gives them a chance to interact with us, and interact with each other. It's kind of a neat little community in the super chats and in the chat there. Now, I just mentioned the super chats. That's a way that people can support us. You can throw a little money into what's called a super chat. It'll highlight your comment, and we'll read it. We'll comment on your comment or do our best to answer your question or discuss the topic that you'd like us to discuss. And it helps us pay the bills because we are not like the CBC. We're not going to the Trudeau government for a handout. And we wouldn't take one if they offered us one anyway. How do you hold a government to account when you require them to keep your salary in your pocket? I mean, it's really just crazy.
Oh, Sheila, don't confine your shaming of the media to the CBC. Ever since last year when it was announced that $595 million was going to go to newspapers as well. And by the way, there's chatter about that being ramped up because of the Wuhan virus. Now there's far more media outlets in the pockets of the federal government, which, I don't know, I'm going to go on a limb here, Sheila. Is that maybe why nobody really gives the Prime Minister a hard question at those 11:15 a.m. pressers every day? And instead we hear questions like, Mr. Prime Minister, are you worried about burnout?
Yeah. I'm going to send a quick link to one of our fast-thinking fellas on the other end of the live stream. And maybe they can show it. It's a Twitter announcement by Aaron Wary, who is one of those journalists in the pocket of Justin Trudeau, Ottawa Press Gallery kind of guy. And it is detailing the total direct support for individuals from the federal government. So far, the federal government has handed out $145.6 billion. We can't have enough children in this country to pay for this bill forever. Like, it is crazy. But in that, if you drill down, you can sort of see the priorities in all of this. $30 million for the Ottawa Press Gallery and $20 million for agriculture.
Wow. The same Ottawa Press Gallery that wants nothing to do with us coming to any press conferences on the Hill, right? I mean, that's how beholden they are to freedom of speech and a free press and free expression. Unbelievable, Sheila.
Yeah, that's a neat little racket the Press Gallery has going, hey? That they control the access to the Prime Minister and the ministers so that they protect their monopoly on the access to the Prime Minister and the ministers. Which, I mean, it protects their business model. It's ridiculous. They get to shut out their competitors so that they financially benefit from it and make the decisions. And then they say, oh, we care about free press, all while taking $30 million in direct support for the Ottawa Press Gallery alone. That's not just for media. That's just the Ottawa Press Gallery versus $20 million for all of agriculture in this country.
Incredible. And of course, the quid pro quo is once you're on the government payroll, don't rattle the cage too much. Don't stir the pot all that vigorously. What a disgrace. Sheila, so much to get to today. There's a media element to, I think, our first story too. I think we have a video. I'll just check with our trained broadcast professionals. It's for the refugee shelter story. Now, as you know, as our viewers may know, I went to, it's called the Willowdale Welcome Center. It seems to be welcoming the Wuhan virus more than anybody else. It certainly isn't welcoming of journalists, because when I went there a week ago, they called the cops on me for asking questions. This is a taxpayer-funded facility, folks. The City of Toronto alone is on the hook for something like about $100 million for funding these refugee shelters. Some are hotels, others, like this particular building, it's the former North York Hydro headquarters. It's an open office building. And it should be noted, Sheila, that if you or I went into business and we decided to buy this premises and say, we're going to make this a bed and breakfast for tourists, we would be forbidden, to do so. It's not meant to be a hostel or a hotel. It's an open office concept. It's exactly the type of facility experts warn is a breeding ground for the coronavirus. And guess what? Last week, there was 11 refugee claimants and 12 staffers, so that's 23 that had the virus. In less than a week later, Sheila, that number has ballooned to 86 in total, at least 86, because they're not releasing the number of staff members anymore who have this. So 2 days ago, I went to this place, which you would think would be front page news. You'd think that the Live Eye would be there, and CBC and CTV and Global and City, but nope, I was the only one there. And, Here's what I uncovered.
Now, here's the thing, folks. When I was here a week ago, as I said, 11 refugees, 12 staff had tested positive for COVID-19. Now the number has ballooned. It is now 74 refugees have tested positive for the Wuhan virus. They haven't released the number of staff, so according to my math, that makes at least 86 people at this center have tested positive for this virus. 3 have already been hospitalized. So I sent emails to Health Canada and to Toronto Public Health, and days later, there hasn't even been the courtesy of a response. As well, I sent an email to John Tory's office, because you see, Mayor Tory, he likes to take to Twitter and he likes to brag about how many tax-paying, law-abiding citizens are getting nailed with those $880 COVID-19 tickets. And yet here at a city-funded refugee shelter where there are numerous violations taking place, well, John Tory, he's not bragging anymore on Twitter. In fact, he won't return my calls either. And that's not really a surprise, because just on Sunday night, Mayor Tory, if you can believe it, was involved in a parade down University Avenue to honor the emergency personnel working for the city in the hospitals on University. And yet the photos clearly indicate
back in 10 seconds, Sheila,
that there was a lack of social distancing occurring there.
You know, Sheila, so many angles here. First of all, did you see that photo out with John Tory? There was at least 9 other people he was posing with. Do you think they were all at least 2 meters apart from one another? And this is the same mayor, as I said, who goes on Twitter bragging about how many people are getting nailed for, jogging through a park by themselves. I mean, it's do as I say, not as I do. First of all, I think that's irresponsible. Secondly, I should note that the councillor for this area, hardly someone who's right of centre, John Fillion, he's even called for a lockdown. You've got at least 86 confirmed cases, 3 people in hospital. And as I saw, so many of the safety protocols in terms of social distancing, personal protection equipment, quarantining, because there was one gentleman I met last week who had just barely here for 2 weeks from Nigeria, and he wasn't in quarantine. All these safety protocols being violated, Sheila. People are coming and going as they please. I think this is a disgrace. And the reason why I reached out to Health Canada and Toronto Public Health is because when the police came to kick my candy ass off that property last week, the constable told me to make a complaint to Health Canada, and the supervisor told me to reach out to Toronto Public Health, because I said to these guys, hey, if you want to fill your monthly coronavirus quota in 1 hour, just walk inside this building. But they had absolutely no desire to do so. What do you make of this, Sheila?
Well, David, did you try calling John Tory's snitch line and turning it in? I mean, he's got a snitch line for everybody else. People walking their dog or rollerblading or shooting hoops alone. I mean, you can snitch on that person. The cops will show up and give you an $800 fine. But we've got a facility full of coronavirus, and people are just coming and going as they please. On one of the other live streams, and regular viewers will probably know, Ezra pointed out that the majority of the coronavirus outbreaks are coming from things that the government should have regulated or the government is in control of. So nursing homes, extended care facilities, refugee centers. These are things that, where the government is in control of and has control over the behavior of the people within the facility, and the people are either, working directly for the government in control of these places or contracted by the government, working under government regulations. And it is the government that is failing, and yet the rest of us are under house arrest.
Yep.
John Tory doesn't know if he's coming or going. I mean, wasn't there a picture of him sitting in his apartment when he was self-quarantining, or his penthouse or whatever, and he was wearing a mask, if I recall correctly, in his own house? Like, what's going on there? And then now he announces that he's closing High Park because he doesn't want people to leave their houses, get fresh air, and look at the cherry blossoms. I saw this last night and I thought, this is totally crazy. You can watch the cherry blossoms on a live stream, because that's the best way to experience nature, is behind a screen or from a book. That's really what gets you in touch with Mother Nature.
Maybe we need some Silicon Valley expert, Sheila, to reinvent Centovision and Smellorama. These were some gimmicks from the Hollywood's history of decades ago to get people in the theater, where whatever appeared on the screen, there would be a scent released in the theater, so you could smell as well as see and hear what was going on the screen. That's amazing. I'm going to tune into a screen to watch cherry blossoms in bloom at High Park. But there's a couple of issues here, Sheila. One is, as you pointed out, this is the height of hypocrisy, is it not? The government saying, basically, quarantine yourselves, maintain social distancing, wear the proper PPE, and then at a city-owned, city-funded, well, I should say taxpayer-funded facility where every violation under the sun is being broken, and the proof is in the proverbial pudding with at least 86 confirmed cases, well, you know what? We've exempted ourselves from our own rules. They don't say that, but that is what, in fact, they are implying, Sheila. And the second thing is, when you see John Tory turn a blind eye to this, and when you see John Tory take place in a parade and then pose for photo ops with, look at that, there's at least 10 people there. They say to me that, John Tory's a very smart guy. John Tory has a big heart. How can he be so tone deaf to not understand that when he does something like this and then gets on Twitter and says, everybody obey the rules, and hey, look at this sap, we just nailed him for 880. How can he possibly be that tone deaf, Sheila?
It seems to me that a lot of the either liberal or more progressive people in charge of this are tone deaf. I remember not even early on in the pandemic, but I think it was like March. So we were in full swing. Patty Hajdu, the health minister, and I think it was the employees of either the Public Health Agency of Canada or Health Canada, she had them, this is when they were preaching the efficacy of social distancing and everybody get back in your houses and don't talk to your families and, stay home from work and don't go get groceries, while advising us to run out and hoard toilet paper. Anyway, she had this photo of all, and I wish I should have found it and sent it to the guys, of all the Public Health Agency people or Health Canada, which one of it escapes me, but she had them all crowded together, like 100 people all shoved into a photo so she could take a photo of them and tweet them, while telling us all that we need to stay 6 feet or more away from our loved ones.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Sheila. Speaking of Patty Hajdu, the former graphic artist, now our chief medical officer, she's also the one, as you know from my visits to the airport, said that asymptomatic passengers were being given masks upon going through customs. We proved time and time again, whether it was from Beijing or Islamabad, that wasn't happening. It was a lie. And when I reached out to her office several times, I think in about 2 weeks later, somebody finally replied, and they didn't address that. I was trying to find out, did the minister misspeak? That was sort of a politically correct way of saying, was she lying? And the response I got was somebody clipped and pasted COVID-19 safety precautions. It's like saying the question, what kind of car do you drive? And the answer I get back is, my curtains are green, right? It is so outrageous, but that's the way these guys roll. Anyways, enough of me ranting. Sheila, I understand from super trained broadcast professional Mike that we have some super chats that we must get to.
We do, because every time we do this show, the super chats get away on us because our people are so generous. And then I have to spend 10 minutes just breezing through super chats that we probably should spend a little bit more time on, out of respect for the people who do give so generously. We've got one from regular viewer, generous donor almost every single time that David and I do the show. Abu Baker Al Puff Daddy gives us $50 Canadian.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Morning, Gunny and Menzoid. I'm so proud of the Rebel for standing up for the little guys and girls against the government. Bullies. Shame on the woke left social justice, so-called civil libertarians who are coward. I have donated to fight the fines. Thank you very much. David and Kian are doing some great work on that. I don't know. Do we have a fight the fines clip that we can show? Guys in the office, I might be just springing this on you because I didn't get the list of things that we're going to show. But yeah, I mean, there's only one way to teach these totalitarians in municipal government that they just can't go around stomping on your charter rights, and that's to fight back. It's a lot cheaper to pay the fines and carry on. But that's what the government is hoping. The government's hoping that the people who are fined say, okay, well, I could spend $5,000 fighting this, or I could just pay $800 and shut up and carry on. But that's not how we roll here at Rebel News.
Oh, well, and Sheila, your wish is Mike's command. He's just told me we do indeed have a clip of one of our latest Fight the Fines cases. Yes. Oh, there was no volume, but luckily it was subtitled, and that was yet another, I think that's the second case we've had, Sheila, where someone was being fined for feeding the homeless. We have, there was a case that went up yesterday. It was when I went to Cornwall to talk to the mom and pop owners of a milk store who were fined $8.80 because they weren't complying fast enough, evidently, with their precautions. I mean, these are people that they're up early, go to bed late, they're operating on razor-thin margins, and $8.80 is a significant fine. And by the way, they just recently got robbed of almost $5,000 of cigarettes, caught on high-def video surveillance, presented that to the cops, and they said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. There's Travis McMillan there, and there's the videotape evidence of the robbery about to take place. And so these are the makers in society, and let's come down hard on that. And for the takers, turn a blind eye. I think you've got a fantastic case coming up as well. It hasn't been posted yet. And again, contrast that to elected officials from Mayor Tory to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau violating the guidelines they tell us to abide by. And when it comes to, municipal-owned buildings where these violations are taking place on a hourly basis, there's absolutely nothing to see here. I think this is really, especially when the warm weather comes, Sheila, and it's on its way, trust me.
Yeah.
I think this is going to reach a boiling point when people are being preached at in terms of this virus, do as I say, not as I do. And I'm not wishing any kind of civil disobedience, but at this stage, I'd be surprised if we don't see it.
They're going to have a hard time keeping me in very much longer. To be honest with you, I'm at that point. And let me be clear. Social distancing is my general disposition anyways, just because of where I live and how I live my life. But I don't like the government telling me what to do when the government can't seem to manage the problem in the places where they are in charge. And it just, the more you think about it, the stupider it feels. Like when you go to Walmart, you realize that half the people there are there because they need to get out. They're on an outing.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the few places they're allowed to go. And it reminds me of when the NDP tried to close some public lands to ATVs, like not just some, vast tracts of public lands to ATVs, because they said, it's dangerous. ATVs are ripping up the land. So all of you can just go in this one space. So people aren't going to stop riding their ATVs. They've spent $10, $15, $20,000 to have an ATV. They're not going to stop doing the thing they like to do. You're just crowding them like cattle into a smaller place, which causes more damage and more accidents and becomes more dangerous. That's what's happening when you can only go to Walmart, or you can only go to Home Depot, or you can only go to Costco with this virus. You're just concentrating where the people are and where the virus could potentially be. If we just let people go back to the stores, like open up the stores again, have the stores maintain social distancing. If they can social distance in Walmart, surely they can do it in Winners, right? I mean, that just seems to make sense. And just follow the same protocols over at Winners. I miss Winners, I'm not going to lie. It's just, people aren't going to stand for this much longer. They're getting bored. People are going broke. And when you see places like Saskatchewan announced last night a 5-staged reopening of their economy.
Yep.
When they're doing it right next door to Alberta, and Manitoba seems to be managing their outbreak okay-ish. You're going to have a hard time telling the people in Manitoba and Alberta, you got to stay in, but Saskatchewan, they're getting back to business.
100%. And Sheila, I just want to add that when it comes to the social distancing that you were speaking of, I have to say that I was way ahead of the curve, because going back decades now, I practice religiously socialist distancing. I would always walk away from those kind of people. And as Steve Lombardi used to do in the WWF, I'm going to pat myself on the shoulder for that. But enough about that bravado. We have some more super chats, I understand.
Yeah, we got through one and then went on a 7-minute tangent.
Way to focus.
Yeah, we're right on the ball. Our second super chat is from my friend Justin from Proud Boys Calgary. Gives us $2 Canadian and offers us a daily reminder that the CCP must be destroyed. Yes. Set the Chinese people free of their authoritarian government. We've got one from Roy Ellsworth, $6.99. Canadian says, why is hydroxychloroquine in the States big, but in Canada they won't even consider it? I don't know if they're not considering it, but they're sure not talking about it very much. And I know in Alberta, our Dina Hinshaw, our chief medical officer, cautioned doctors and pharmacists, because in Canada, or not in Canada, I don't know what it's like in other provinces, but in Alberta, we do have some drugs that pharmacists can prescribe. They cautioned against pharmacists and doctors prescribing it to their friends and family. Basically, preventing well-connected people from getting access to the drug when the rest of us can't. So I don't know how much of that was going on, but I bet you it was a fair bit, because it sure does seem effective, and the government's not really talking about it. So, I mean, and who can really blame doctors and pharmacists from taking preventative measures for their friends and family? I mean, really, if you were a pharmacist and you knew this drug was effective and the government wasn't promoting it, would you prescribe it to your friends and family if it meant saving their lives? Probably.
Yeah, no, that is a glimmer of hope. And, it should be noted, Sheila, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, like 70% of that chemical, whose name I cannot pronounce properly, is India has about 70% of that. And once there was this glimmer of hope that this could be part of the cure for coronavirus, they immediately shut down exports. And Donald Trump got on the phone to India and said, okay, you do that, there's going to be trade sanctions. And guess what? The exporting of that chemical is back into place. That's the kind of leadership I would love to see in this country. We're going to finish off these super chats, but what we have to get to next is your superb commentary on the absolute opposite of Trump taking a leadership position, which was Justin Trudeau being the slave boy for China in terms of getting them more personal protective equipment. These are the originators of this disease that we are both dealing with in terms of medical and economic turmoil. But we'll get to that after the super chats. But it is amazing, and it was also amazing. I think we talked about this too, Sheila. It was Trump was originally dismissed as a kook about this, but once it started showing promising signs, suddenly the left-wing media in the U.S. got on board. But Trump wasn't getting the credit. It was Como. That was the crusader for this. The world is upside down sometimes, Sheila.
Well, it also, I mean, the media were happy to cover for what sort of looks like a murderer of that lady who gave her husband and herself. I don't know how sick she made herself or if she even took the drug herself. She said she threw it all up. She and her husband, so the story goes, consumed fish tank cleaner because it had a chemical similar to hydroxychloroquine in it. And then she blamed Trump because her husband died after Trump sort of said, yeah, there's some efficacy with this drug. I think maybe we should kind of try it. She took it. Her husband took it. And now it turns out quite possibly she could have murdered her husband. And now the media aren't talking about that anymore after they wouldn't shut up about how Trump was responsible for this man dying because he touted this malaria medicine that could be effective in treating the COVID-19 virus. Once it comes out that, yeah, maybe the lady actually killed her husband using fish tank cleaner and tried to blame Trump. Well, you won't find that on CBC. So I think that's kind of funny. How the media will cover for a murderer.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that might be the treatment of the media of that particular story, I think is the most shameless, or should say, shameful treatment of a story since the Covington High School kids, in terms of how it was completely manipulated, that it actually turned into fake news. Once again, proving the president right in his criticism of the media south of the border. But we should get more of those super chats read, I understand.
I know. Okay. We've got one from CPAS, gives us $5 Canadian. Have you heard back from Dr. Tam's office about her vote at the World Health Organization?
Yeah.
And can you look into how much Sophie's nanny is still costing us? Is it nanny or nannies? I think she might be down to one now. Yeah, I should find that out. That's a great access to information question.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we all know the answer, though, Sheila, right?
Yeah, especially now, actually, when the kids aren't in school and she's not traveling. Yeah. I bet she's got nannies and tutors, even though she's at home and she's not doing anything. And no, I haven't heard back from Dr. Tam's office about her vote at the World Health Organization. And I don't suppose we ever will. We've got one from a Viking Insane, $2 Canadian. Please cancel my free trial of communism. Yeah, we're on our 90-day free trial of communism. They control our movement. We just wait for the government check to come into our account, and then we line up in the bread lines at Walmart to get our groceries. It's it's pretty Soviet, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got one from Denny Paymont, gives us $5 Canadian. Go Rebel, have any Rebel News bumper stickers? Yeah, we do. I think we do have, or we did have, some Rebel News bumper stickers in the Rebel News store. Maybe the guys want to put one on the screen. I have no access to what is actually happening on the stream, so I couldn't tell you if the guys can show you a bumper sticker or not. But we do have some there if you want to check it out. We've got one from Stephen Logan, $5 Canadian. I wonder if Trump will let me immigrate to the USA on the basis that we have a spineless mangina for a prime minister.
Holy Jonathan Yaniv.
I don't know if that's enough to get you refugee status, but I don't know if Trump's taken any economic refugees these days, but it's as good a reason as any. I mean, it might get you into Canada. If you were just wandering across the border, that might be a good enough reason, but I don't think it works the other way around. And thank you everybody for those super chats. If you'd like to pitch in to help the Rebel, that's one of the best ways to do it, because we don't get any money from the federal government. We're grassroots supported by people like you at home. And I will say it now because I always forget. Please make sure you're subscribed to the Rebel our YouTube page, ring the little bell also so you never miss a story from us or a live stream where you then get a chance to support us with a super chat. David?
And we're caught up.
We're caught up.
Fantastic. Well, Sheila, without further ado, let's get to your very important story of the opposite Trump. Of course, I'm talking about Justin Trudeau, and of course, I'm talking about how instead of blaming China, instead of doing something like, I love this story that I saw yesterday, the state of Missouri suing China. This will be the first, I'm sure, of hundreds of jurisdictions around the world. You won't see this lawsuit coming from Ottawa, though, folks. Let me tell you that. Quite the opposite. It was how Justin Trudeau basically kowtowed to the very perpetrators of this terrible crisis that we're in. If we can roll that clip, guys, that would be great.
Remember when Trudeau shipped almost all of Canada's entire strategic supply of masks to China, just as the Chinese-spawned virus was then piggybacking on flights full of travelers over to Canadian airports? Well, it's worse than just that. You see, the Canadian government ran around gathering up supplies that the Chinese demanded, even running off to the Red Cross to get them, because at the time our government knew that we didn't have the supplies we needed for ourselves to be giving away to the Chinese. And now the Western world is instead getting defective, possibly contaminated junk back in return from the Chinese. That is, if we get them at all. Look at this from the CBC. Trudeau confirms some cargo planes sent to China for pandemic supplies returned empty. On-the-ground congestion blamed for preventing delivery of PPE during plane's landing window. Yeah, right. We have a briefing note presented to the House of Commons Health Committee from Foreign Affairs Canada, dated from the end of January. The note was to Minister François-Philippe Champagne to prepare him for his talks with China's foreign minister about the coronavirus, including key messages of standing with China. The note says that our offered supplies should have arrived, and our first question was to ask China, is there something more we can do to assist? Here on page 37, understand there have been shortages of medical equipment. We are actively following up on options for providing supplies. Now, here's where there's more to the preening story of Justin Trudeau's dangerous stupidity in giving away Canada's pandemic supplies to the very nation that actually manufactures the supplies in the first place and hid the extent of the pandemic until it was too late and may have actually released the virus on the entire world from their haphazard petri dish of a virus farm in Wuhan. Trudeau didn't just offer the supplies to be nice. The Chinese demanded them, and Trudeau said, okay, sure thing, boss.
Oh, Sheila, and they say that crime doesn't pay. I mean, this is so unbelievable what you've uncovered. First of all, again, so many angles here, but I want to address one of the biggest lies that was given for the lack of supplies coming back. It was about the on-the-ground congestion at airports. Sheila, I can tell you, I was last at Pearson International Airport in Toronto on Monday, and it resembled the Overlook Hotel from Stephen King's The Shining. Yeah. It was absolutely deserted. It was eerie how empty this giant Terminal 1 was. There was only a handful of flights coming in. What congestion? There's no... the roads right now in the Greater Toronto Area are actually moving the way they should be, and I haven't been able to say that for at least 25 years. So that alone raises, my BS antenna in terms of what they're saying in terms of the excuses here, Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, are there really a lot of countries taking a lot of flights, inbound flights from mainland China right now? Probably not as much as they used to. There's a catastrophe hitting the airline industry because there's just no air travel, even between relatively safe places, let alone from China to anywhere else in the world. But the reporters repeat this verbatim. When the government says, oh yeah, we couldn't, there was congestion at the airport. It's just too busy at the airport for them to load the planes that we sent, that the Chinese government knew we were sending. So we had to bring the planes back empty. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And yet the press gallery journalists are like, yeah, that's a great excuse. Let's write that. Let's not ask any more questions about it.
And Sheila, didn't at one point the government was even going to the Canadian Red Cross to see if they could source up some supplies of PPE, again, to be destined to China?
Yeah, so there's how the story goes is benevolent Canada saw struggling China and said, let us help. Let us send what we have because we want to help. That's not quite how it went down. The Chinese made specific demands to us, and Canada has 3 levels of preparedness. We have like a relief supply of PPE, and then we have a pandemic strategic stockpile of PPE. And then worst comes to worst, we can always go to third-party aid agencies like the Canadian Red Cross. When China made the demand of the Canadian government said, sure, boss, let me run around and find that for you.
Unbelievable.
We went to our relief supply and found that the relief supply was low. And then we went to the pandemic supplies, which we must have in place, in case we get hit with a pandemic like we are now. Realized that was low, took all those, and then went to the Red Cross and said, you're our last line of defense here in Canada, but can you pony up what we have so we can ship them over to the Chinese? And that's what happened with the masks, the 16 tons of masks that went to China. And that's how Canada not only sent their pandemic relief supplies, but their general relief supplies, and then robbed Peter to pay Paul from the Red Cross.
So, Sheila, let's get this straight. China gives Canada and the entire world a pandemic to deal with. We respond by giving China very valuable PPE equipment for no reason that I can conjure up, except for this. We always have to look at the motivation. And I would suggest that the motivation for Justin Trudeau is this much lusted for UN Security Council seat. He's got to play super nice, best boyfriends with the Chinese communist regime in Beijing. Is that what this is all about? That he has deprived our country of these much needed supplies so he can fulfill this fantasy of his?
I don't know. It seems that he's ponying up to the world's dictators like Iran. By the way, did we ever find out what happened to that plane full of Canadians that died a few months ago? We just forget about that.
Yeah.
But his sinophilia, to invent a word, I guess, goes back a little bit further. We all have to remember, I think it was 2012 or 2013, when he was saying at one of his Justin Trudeau Ladies' Night fundraiser things that China was his favorite dictatorship because of its ability to turn on a dime and enforce green policies. China being green. I mean, that's madness. But that's what he said. It was his favorite dictatorship. I don't have a favorite dictatorship. I hate them all. But he actually had one that was at the top of his list, and it was China long before he ever dreamed that he would actually fumble and foul his way into the prime minister's office. And now that he is, I think that sinophilia is convenient for him because now he gets to use it to angle for this UN Security Council seat. But I think he's just always kind of liked China.
No, I think that quote was very telling, Sheila, an admiration for a basic dictatorship, because as much as this prime minister claims he's all about diversity, we know for a fact he's not about embracing a diversity of opinions. And, case in point, the way any of his critics have been treated, how we have been treated. And I really harbor the belief that if he could turn Canada away from certain democratic procedures and implement certain dictatorship procedures, he would be all over that concept. What do you think, Sheila?
Aren't we doing that right now? To some extent, we are all living like these poor Chinese citizens under the thumb of the government, waiting for the government to provide sustenance for us instead of allowing us to go to the jobs that we like to do and run the businesses that we like to run. And they're controlling our movement. They want to use our cell phones to track us. Feeling pretty CCP. And I think hopefully Canadians are freedom-loving people, even the ones that don't think they are or haven't really given a thought to the government tromping on their rights. I think a lot of them are about to have a cultural awakening to the ways of my people, where we don't like being told what to do. And I think there's going to be a lot of resistance going forward when they realize that, as somebody rightly pointed out, the free trial of communism, it's not all it's chalked up to be.
I hope you're right. In the meantime, I'm just reading that headline about tracking Canadians with their cell phones. That's a Chinese thing, by the way, Sheila, is still on the table for this guy. What a disgrace. Super producer Mike tells me that we have some super chats to get to.
Yes. And even though Justin is supposed to be on a day off, he's watching the chat and sending me the super chats because he literally never takes a day off. He's worse than me. Sometimes I go on holidays and you guys don't even know I'm gone because I put in like a week's worth of work. Nobody even knows. We've got Pripal08 gives us $5 Canadian. Also regular viewer, regular contributor to the super chats. Thank you very much. Says they need to make this bad enough to keep the lockdown going, but not so bad that people question their response or, God forbid, get angry at China. I think that's what the government thinks that's going to happen. But I think that I think all of this might convince people who never even thought of China as an evil, demonic force in the world are waking up to the fact that they definitely are that. Hot Soup gives us $5 Canadian. I heard the 2 airplanes Canada sent to China for all that promised PPE got turned back empty. Yes, we just talked about that. Hot Soup, you were ahead of the game because you super chatted before we even got to that. Tyler Beach gives us $5 Canadian. Love the rebel. History tells us that powerful men have always loved having power. This seems like a massive power grab to me. Tell me I'm wrong. Is it powerful men or stupid men? I think stupid men with unearned power like to use catastrophes to snatch power that they haven't earned, that they don't deserve. And I think maybe that's what's happening here. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, as the saying goes, Sheila, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Ezra mentioned in one of his monologues that the Justin Trudeau Liberals got a taste of that absolute power thanks to this pandemic. And you know what? They like the taste. They really do. Yeah. And that makes it more incumbent upon all of us to fight for the civil liberties that we have, for our charter rights, that this regime would have no hesitation in rolling back. I truly believe that.
Yes, and if people want to help us fight back, they can go to fightthefines.com to see your stories and to help us push back against the municipal governments fining people. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, but I think it's even compounded and made worse when you already have someone who's corrupt getting their hands on the power and then becoming even more and more corrupt, which is the case with the Liberals. Trinoculus P gives us $5 Canadian. Hypothetically, your opinion of Alberta joining the U.S. Well, we'd sure be a lot better off. We'd sure be a lot more free. And I think for much of Alberta, with the exclusion of the socialist city-state of Edmonton and the parts of British Columbia, the cowboy parts of British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, we are more culturally compatible with our American neighbors to the south than to our fellow Canadians to the east and the west. It's just how it is. We have a freedom culture, a gun culture. Our economies are more compatible with the people to the south. It's just how it is. I mean, we were just sort of shoved here long after the rest of the country was settled, and we don't fit. And that, I mean, you wouldn't hear me complaining if we left Canada. Now, do we join the U.S.? Depends on what they're offering me.
And you know, Sheila, I started my career in journalism in Alberta in 1985. I spent 2 years there. And my takeaway when I came back to Ontario, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my opinion and what I told, my friends and family about Alberta is that, and it's a compliment, I should think, is that I found Alberta to be the most American of all the provinces and territories. Would you think that's a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I do. And, as an Albertan, you don't feel like you behave like an American. You just feel like you're an Albertan. And you look at the rest of the country like they're slightly weird and a little bit too soft. And that's not an insult to the rest of the country. It's just how it is. You have different jobs. You live different lifestyles. You don't have that aversion to the government telling you what to do that we have here. We sort of have that frontier spirit that, when you look at an Albertan and you look at someone from Wyoming or South Dakota or Oklahoma or Texas, you'd say, yeah, you could slide right into small town South Dakota and I'd hit the ground running. But I'd have a real tough time in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. I'd suffer there. And that's really just how it is.
I'm suffering here and I was born here. Anyways, go on with these super chats.
We're not taking any refugees from Toronto in the new Republic of Alberta. The Commonwealth of Alberta, whatever we decide, you're going to have to apply like everybody else. I hope they let me stamp the passport. That's what I want my job to be when we separate. We've got one from Theo, local loaner. I can relate. I feel like I'm the local loaner. Gives us £10.
Wow.
Shortly before the lockdown, I was thrown out of a bar on a Saturday night. Also feel like I can relate, although not recently, because they learned I'm friends with a Trump supporter. A staff member said I associate with racists and told me to F off. I don't know if, I'm sure our viewers at home, they probably subscribe to Gavin McInnes, even just his podcast if you're not interested in subscribing to censored.tv. But he has a lot of those same problems. He tries to go to his local watering holes and just have a beer, an apolitical beer, and he literally gets run out of the joint because people don't like his politics, or not even over something he said, but over something somebody said he said. And then it gets telephoned all the way along until he's like a white nationalist, according to the telephone of liberal changing what you actually said into what they said.
Isn't that amazing, Sheila? Like I said earlier, the left is all about a diversity, but when it comes to diversity of opinions, even in a country with the First Amendment, no, we're not so much about that kind of diversity. So the hypocrisy is just astounding.
Yeah. Your problem, Theo, local loaner, is the politics of the place in which you live. You'd have a tougher time being a liberal in the local watering holes in these parts than a Trump supporter, that's for sure. I remember actually our agriculture minister, Devin Dreeshen, before he was our agriculture minister in Alberta, he went to the United States to work on the Trump campaign. And the NDP thought this was like a big gotcha. We're like, oh my God, he can't run for MLA because he's a Trump supporter. And it's like, he's a rural Alberta MLA farmer, actual farmer, agriculture minister, and they're like, he's not fit because he's a Trump supporter. And I think it actually helped his campaign, but that just goes to show you how out of touch the NDP are.
Talk about not knowing the room, Sheila. That's astounding. Of course that was a positive for his constituency.
Like, they had this picture of him wearing a red Trump hat. I think he's holding up a beer on election night, or a champagne glass, like cheersing Trump, like raising his glass to Trump. And that was like their scandal. And everyone's like, yeah, that was pretty much me, but I was on the other side of a TV screen that night. Like, no one's upset about it.
Isn't it too bad that last year Andrew Scheer didn't do something like that? I know I'm dreaming in Technicolor here, but what the heck?
We've got a super chat from Selena Goring, gives us $5. What do you think about my socks? What's on your socks, Selena? Are they Trump socks? Because I have Trump socks, and I have like the "Don't Tread on Me" socks. I have some of those. I have USA socks. I have Alberta socks, but I don't have ridiculous rainbow flag socks like Justin Trudeau to show to the world leaders when he should be talking about a trade deal.
Well, Sheila Gunn-Reid, I've always said you have socks appeal.
Hey, do we have socks in the Rebel store? I haven't poked around in there in a while, but we should have socks. Like, we should have Republic of Alberta socks or Rebel socks or something fun in there just to, like, be the anti-Trudeau. Guys, are you listening?
Look at all this wonderful merchandise.
Write those good ideas down. They're fleeting for me. Lee McCamey gives us $20 Canadian. You got to check out Dr. Judy Mikovits, who worked on viral vaccine research and was censured by Dr. Fassi. And she also pointed out that all vaccines are tainted. Fassi tried to jail her. I don't know anything about that story, but you put it on my radar, so I'll probably Google it after we get off air. We've got one from David Anderson, gives us $5 Canadian. What happened to Keehan's report on the High River meat processing plant? I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
Should be up, should be out there, I'm sure, unless one of the guys will pop into your ear and tell you otherwise, but it should be out there. Yep. Keehan was looking into the outbreak at a meat processing plant here in Alberta. It was a COVID-19 outbreak, and it's just tearing through the facility, and it has to do with foreign workers, cheap labor, not wanting to pay Alberta wages to Alberta workers, and then keeping them in cramped conditions to house them, so that they can go back to their slave labor jobs, as opposed to paying Albertans to process Alberta beef for the rest of the country.
It's incredible. And Sheila, this just in, the video is still being edited and will likely go up later tonight.
Perfect. Yeah,
I've always wanted to do that. This just in, like, you know.
This just in. Breaking. Yeah, Keehan put a lot of work into that video, and there's a lot of angles, and so it does require a fair bit of work. You must have seen Keehan posting about that on Twitter. I think he put a video that he filmed himself from on location that required no editing, and that should still be up. I was poking around on Keehan's Twitter feed earlier, so.
There he is. I think that's called a teaser, right? A preview. Coming attraction. Any more super chats, Sheila?
Yes, a few more super chats. With regard to that processing plant too, I do hope that changes the way that these huge multinational companies do business in Canada. This isn't a country where we have slave labor. You do need to pay the going rate for skilled labor. And to be honest with you, in these meat packing plants, it is skilled labor. It's not just dummy work. You do have to have some level of skilled work in an abattoir. And yet these huge multinational companies basically get the luxury of reaping the benefits of putting your plant in Alberta because of our tax regime, and then they bring in foreign workers as opposed to paying Albertans.
I don't know how they get away with it.
I hope it changes, because now the province, because of this outbreak in this plant that is skewing our coronavirus numbers upward when they really aren't, when you look at like what's happening in Alberta and what's happening outside of this Calgary zone, we're all going to be on lockdown longer because this plant is bringing in foreign workers. Anyway, we've got one from Meat Ministries International, gives us $25 Canadian. Hydroxychloroquine was patented, the generic brand, by Apotex. Yes, that's true. A Canadian pharmaceutical company which founders were killed in 2017. Suspicious what we know of hydroxychloroquine. No suspects were found. I don't want to say there's no suspects. I've actually dug quite a bit into the Sherman's murder because I'm kind of a true crime junkie. I'm not going to say there aren't suspects, but it remains with no convictions. Working class Canadian, $50. $50 Canadian. Thank you very much. If it was only possible to rally 400,000, even 1 million people to march on Ottawa and throw out the liberal traitors from Parliament and every other globalist, Green Party, NDP, Conservatives that are globalist, empty the swamp. I'm sure, you know what, though? They won't care. It doesn't matter how many people you get there. They don't care. Hundreds of truckers drove all the way across the country to Ottawa, and Justin Trudeau couldn't meet with them. And the Conservatives, you can tell, were kind of embarrassed that they met with them. So I don't think these people care. They just want your vote. They want your donation. But I don't know how much the majority of them actually care, beyond the fact that this is a job and a stepping stone to something else, some other consultant gig after the fact, and a cozy pension. We've got one from Tech Christian, gives us $20 Canadian. When the economy comes roaring back again, you will define our path forward, a path towards a better, more equal society. A quote from Trudeau yesterday: "It is not about coronavirus now, it's about bringing in communism." I've heard a lot of musings about, oh my God, it's 11 o'clock. I've heard a lot of musings about people saying that this should be a reason why we need a guaranteed income for all Canadians. Disincentivizing work. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is born from this. They've been trying to do that for 50 years. Manuel Avila gives us $10 Canadian. JT's fascination for the communist regime of China is similar to the fascination that Hugo Chavez had for the communist regime of Cuba. Most dangerous. We've got one from Joey Hage. Don't eat the yellow snow, CCP bad. You enlightened us about what that meant last week. INF MDA gives us $10 Canadian. Did you see today Trudeau was asked about your Fire Town petition? He did his usual identity politics word salad and called it racist.
No way.
What a shock. I'm critical of Theresa Tam for the same reason that I'm critical of Patty Haydu, and that's they are flip-flopping failures that have endangered the lives of Canadians and have called Canadians racist for policies they seem to have found not racist 72 hours later. And we're all supposed to just forget that they said those things. It's not about race. These are two very inept, one's a politician, one's an unelected bureaucrat. They're just bad at their job. And people who are bad at their jobs, they should be fired.
And I'm going to pinch myself here, Sheila. This is coming from the guy who can't even remember how many times he's donned blackface and brownface, right? And we're the racists.
That was a learning opportunity for us, though. That's fine. We got to learn from that.
Unbelievable.
It's 11:02.
Well, Sheila, we are over time. We didn't even get our 2-minute warning in, and well, that's the way it goes. I'll end it on this. Sheila, there's a lot of chatter right now here in Toronto that there is going to be a protest on Saturday at noon outside Queen's Park. This will be a real moment if it comes to fruition. It might be a nothing burger. You never can tell what's happening by the online people. But it will be very interesting to see if that does materialize, if law enforcement's going to show up and whack them and stack them, whereas just up the street at 5800 Yonge, every violation under the COVID-19 safety protocols is happening on a taxpayer-funded facility. So I'm going to be there for that just to see what goes down. So we'll have that to talk about on next Tuesday, because folks, as you know, or as you may know, Sheila and I are filling in for the Big Boss Man every Tuesday and Thursday at this time. So I want to thank you one and all for tuning in, and I especially want to thank the Super Chatters because, as Sheila said earlier, we're not getting any of that government payola like our competitors do, nor would we accept it if offered. So in the meantime, stay safe.
We have one Super Chat. We have one Super Chat.
One
Don't
more
sign
under the
off
wire.
yet. We have to be fair to these people.
Sure.
Observer Dude gives us £5 and said, this is a question for David. Do you think you might get arrested for doing journalism in public during this time? Well, we're going to find out at the protest, aren't we? And I bet you we are going to have a lot of people requiring our help through Fight the Fines at fightthefines.com after that protest. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, well, I was threatened with arrest if I didn't get off the refugee shelter property, even though it is a taxpayer-funded property. So I'm not. This is kind of hazy in terms of the private property rights, because in a sense, I'm one of the guys paying for this. I've got a tiny little ownership interest. But that's the way they roll when you ask insensitive questions. Call the police and the state steps in. So we'll see, who knows. But I'm not going to stop asking these questions, no matter how much law enforcement threatens me. And by the way, this isn't the kind of journalism you're ever going to see from the trained SEALs and the media party. They are compliant, and they wouldn't even dream of asking the insensitive question in the first place. But Sheila, glad you got that in under the wire. As I said, folks, Sheila and I are here every Tuesday and Thursday. So until next Tuesday, stay safe.